M5.
Okay.
And I'll ask it again during the regular session just in
I'll
case
wait for
we
you.
need time to gather that.
A minute.
Um, I recognize that there is a grant that became available to us to help fund part of this project. So I'm curious what the deadline is when we need to make a decision for
You
it.
can stream it from down here.
Yeah.
That would be my next move. Okay. We'll keep messing with it.
Okay, got it.
All right.
And that's it for me. Thank you.
That it? Okay. I want to bring your attention. We've done a couple of things different on the agenda this time. The minutes, we kind of condensed them. Makes it a lot easier for Tracy to get all this stuff out and one thing another. My only was that we have them available. People can go online and see the complete minutes or the recording from the meeting so that they can see what happened. But it's just, a lot of this is just ties up with a lot of things, unless you folks have any objection to that. And then the other thing, we added a council comment section, which we're going to do. You know, you folks all have things that you happen between meetings and things like that, and I think it's a good chance for you to talk about some of the things that's happened and things that you want to just discuss about. So we'll have that on there and see how that works. And okay, no other questions on the agenda. Let's move on to A2, is to receive a biannual update from the Lansky Library Board.
Mayor, if I could interrupt for just a moment, I do have the comment on the consent agenda item. Do we want to cover that now?
Okay,
Just 1 second.
sure. You wanted to move something?
There's the consent agenda item K5.
Okay.
I know that Stacy is working with Dallas County Elections on getting some clarification regarding some additional provisions in our contract.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some residents that want to speak tonight regarding some of those provisions that we believe should be included in our ordinance
720.
that will help,
720.
that will align our ordinance with Texas Election Code
Do you
and
think I
improve the
can
integrity
stop
of our
this
election
and start it
process.
back up?
So I think it might be important for us
After
to hear from
changing
these
settings,
residents and for the council to
It's
consider
struggling a little bit with the
separately
setting.
under the regular
I'll put it
agenda
in.
as opposed to consent.
Okay. Pete, can we move that just before the M1? Rather than put it clear to the end? Sure. Okay, well, we make a note, we'll just do that.
Thank you, Mayor.
A5, that is. Okay, all right. Anything else?
Well, good. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. I'm sorry.
That's all right. All right. Okay. Hi, I am Kristen Hansen. I am
This is
the
frickin' Friday.
board chair for the Farmers Branch Mansky Library Board. And so I'm here to just update you on everything that's been going on since the last time we were here. So our meetings are held the second Thursday of each month at 7 p.m. at the library, and all are welcome to attend. We tend to not meet in July because of summer, and December because it's December. And it's crazy. Our board is mostly comprised, our members are mostly current and former librarians, educators, and then a few other professionals. And our overall member attendance to our meetings is around 93%. So there's just some of the things we've been up to over the last 6 months. The book wall is installed. I'm sure many of you have been in and seen it. It's really cool. The board worked to procure donations for the wall and then also evaluating them and preparing them so that they could be affixed to the wall before they were painted. And then we are
Maybe we'll play the
going to
video
start, or
over
we
this one,
plan
but
to
that's
start
awesome.
hosting an annual book drive and read-in to celebrate the Icelandic Christmas Eve tradition
We'll
of,
get into playing
I looked up
podium
the word and
first.
I've since forgotten how to say it, but it's something along the lines of Jólabókaflóð, which is like
I need
Christmas
to know
book
what
club.
version this is.
And so the Icelandic tradition is everybody gives each other a book on Christmas Eve, and then you drink
2022 version 3.
hot chocolate or whatever other beverage you might like to drink, and you sit around and you read books, and that's kind of how you celebrate Christmas Eve. So we want to do some kind of event like that at the library as part of the Christmas festivities that are going on there. So we also have a new library director, Trevor, and you'll get to meet him in a little bit. And then Ryan, who was acting as our interim director, was promoted to assistant library director. And we're now under the purview of the Parks and Recreation Department. All of our virtual programming was shut down over the summer and brought back to in-person, bringing tons of people into the library, which has been great. And then summer reading was a huge success, 316 participants overall, reading 5,451 books with over 3,000 people attending different summer reading programs. And then we've been holding CPR and first aid certification classes for the library staff, and these classes were provided by the Parks and Recreation staff. We have new adult programming that we've added, tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, bullet journaling club, Knitwits, which is a regular group of people who meet to knit, and then different adult craft nights using some of the themes that are in that maker space, the glow forge and the crickets and things like that. The library staff has participated in a number of community events over the past year. So we were at Viva, the Summer Funshine, and the Independence Day celebration, the Christmas tree lighting, and most recently the Chamber of Commerce's Business in the Branch. And then we held the first holiday book drive we're hoping will become more of an annual thing to benefit the Dallas Medical Center here in Farmers Branch, and over 275 books were donated to the hospital. Our building renovation and amenity updates. Everything is pretty much done. The fountains were installed. The pickleball court is there, and I have friends who are avid pickleball court players and have used it and said it's great. The book sculpture is there. We have a new a way for patrons to give us feedback on things. There's a QR code in the library, and then there's also a link at the bottom of communications that come out from the library, where our patrons can kind of either praise staff members or say, hey, can you fix this, or different things like that. The community hub is done, and that has provided a lot of great space for especially the things that were done over the Christmas holidays. And we've purchased some pro panels for art displays and a counting system at the secondary entrance for the library, so we can get a more accurate count of how many people are coming in and out of the library. And then new portable AV equipment. I think there's an 85-inch television on a rolling cart that was purchased and delivered not that long ago, so we can kind of make better use of that community hub space and use it for showing movies or doing presentations. Tiny People furniture was added into the children's area for our youngest patrons, and then our Kids Space game console was added, which my own children used recently and very much enjoyed. Some weird, bizarre version of air hockey and soccer that was a game on there, and so it's been a big hit. Here's our library statistics over the past 3 years. So you can kind of see 2020, the majority of which we would have been doing virtual engagements, and the library would have been closed to people, compared with where we are now, 2021. And you can see that just as the library opened back up and more of our programs became in person, attendance has increased. We've gotten a lot of new borrowers. Circulation has increased, and just attendance in programs and the number of programs that we have been able to offer has increased drastically. So here's some upcoming additions. We are looking forward to excitedly adding a lighted crosswalk installation from the parking lot across Golfing Green to the library. It's very dark there at night, and so that's a great thing to be added for our patrons who use the library in the evening. And a drive-up, drop-off bin for books is also going to be added in that secondary parking lot across the street from the library. The bees are being replaced with butterflies. It was not the ideal. It was very cool, and I loved watching them, but it was not the ideal habitat for them. They were not able to get the pollen and water and other things that they needed, so they're being moved to the West Rose Garden, where they will have the things that they need to make themselves happier people and make honey like they're supposed to. A huge outdoor patio table is going to be installed, and lots of library in-service training to include emergency preparedness, and our police and fire department are going to help with those. And we are getting 2 more book sculptures from Mike Stolke. So there will be, we're in phase 2, there will be 10 total book sculptures. So that'll be really exciting. And then we're going to have the return of the bookmark art contest, which is always a big hit with the artists in my household. All right, so now it's time to meet Trevor.
So I'm Trevor Hunter. I'm the new library director. I guess new is still applicable. I started in August last year. It seems like it's been longer than that and shorter than that at the exact same point in time. But if y'all have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm over at the library. I'm not that far away. I'd love to come give you a tour through the building, talk to you. If you've got questions, I know y'all have a very loaded agenda today, so I'm not going to take up a whole lot of your time. But just say thank you for all the support you've given to the library, all the support you've given in the past, you're currently giving, and giving into the future. We do truly appreciate everybody who comes out. So thank you.
All right, any questions? In your packet was the library's annual report as well as a copy of the slides.
Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a question, Kristen. One thing that you didn't discuss, but just thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
It's very thorough, very comprehensive, and now that you're part of the Parks Department, this fits right in. So when is the fountain behind the library coming back into service? I know it's been closed for the creek.
Oh, that's not something
Streamlining and, well, I thought it was in the.
Yeah, I don't know that that's not something I know the answer to. I don't know who would know the answer to that.
Do you know that?
The library you're talking about the library in Rawhide? Sorry, not the library in Rawhide, the fountain in Rawhide behind the library.
Yes, yeah. 'Cause I know we'd lost the other 2 we had further downstream from some of the high water flooding events we had, but that one was operating, and it was my sense or understanding it was shut down and moved so they could do all that remedial work there, and which I think is basically concluded.
The aerators that are along Rawhide that we put in, there's an issue when it comes to flooding.
Right.
The clog, the breakaway is a maintenance nightmare.
Right.
The cove, because it's gone, there's nowhere for the cove to hide it, like say out here in Augusta. And the reason that was closed in was due to the fact it was just a
That's
trash.
right.
Yes.
So for us to put them back out into the creek,
Is this the only port?
it's a continual problem of money back. So as of right now, they're not going back along the creek because that is
Right, I understand, but it would be nice if we could find a way to maybe anchor them, and if it wasn't in the middle of the creek, maybe, a few degrees.
I didn't reset
one
the
side or
levels
other,
yet.
but
We can
I
just do it
understand
for
what
the
you
next
need. It is a
meeting.
floodplain, and that's what it's designed
It says
for.
perfect space.
Residents love the fountains, and in day and night,
Yes.
they were really beautiful, sounded nice, you could hear them, a mile away.
Yes, when it's the water stationary and it's just sitting there, it's the problem of all the floods that we keep hearing. But it's that, more or less, I know it's a creek, but it comes to drainage, just where all the stormwater goes and it breaks all the anchors away. And they end up flooding on down to here. We've had some of them come on down to here, if we're able to recover.
Right.
That's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, I would just think there would be some kind of an engineering method that we could protect them somehow. But I understand what you're talking about when we have these severe weather events and get, 8 inches of rain in a day or hours.
Yes, sir.
Water's got to go somewhere. Thank you. Sure. Sure. I know we've got a full agenda. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much. presentation. It sounds like there's a lot of exciting things
Well,
happening.
at least we have a
library.
backup method.
I was looking at the data and then the report that was presented. Do you know out of the existing borrowers, how many of them are Farmers Branch residents?
Trevor would know that better than I would, yeah.
I don't have it in my hands right now, but I can get it to you.
Do we keep track of the people who attend the events that we put on at the library? How many of them are actual Farmers Branch residents versus not?
We don't, mainly because then we start getting into privacy issues with people who may not want to, who may not be necessarily a borrower or a Farmers Branch resident that wants a library card. We don't want them to feel like they can't come to our events because they don't have a library card. There are some circumstances where if they're, for example, we had scheduled the Blackland Prairie Raptor Center to come out and do a display, and since there's some risks and very extremely low risks, but there is something involved with animals, there would be a waiver attached to that. But as far as asking patrons to, come in, are you a library card holder? It's not a question we want to ask because then it's restricting access to our events.
And then one of the other things that you mentioned was that from 2021 to 2022, there was a significant increase in events. Is there a reason for the increase?
Well, March of 2020 is when the world closed for a long time and has slowly reopened. And I think you could probably say that starting when school started this past fall is when we kind of saw things, back to what people would have considered normal pre-COVID and pre-pandemic. And that's probably what you're seeing in relation to there being more of an increase in events. And we have some different spaces. We have the maker space the innovation zone that we didn't have before. And so that allows us to do different events that maybe we weren't able to do prior to the renovation.
The only reason I ask is because when I looked at the average attendance and compared it from 2020 to 2021 to 2022, it looks like in 2020, of course, the average attendance was about 28 people per event, and that was expected.
Okay.
And then in the next year, there was about the average attendance per event was 71, which is significant. But then in 2022, it seemed like it dropped down to 39. So we'll be having a discussion about kind of holistically events later on and the
I think that if you're
resources. But
if you're looking at the per person, as we have more events, your per person attendance is going to go down if you're looking at the math that way. But I can say, like, back in October, there was a pumpkin decorating thing, and Dustin, who's our children's librarian, went and bought a whole bunch of those little tiny pie pumpkins, like the most he could find, thinking that he had like twice as many as he was going to need. They used all of them and then started stapling together styrofoam bowls to be pumpkins so that other children who came in could decorate pumpkins. My own kids and I have showed up to library events like 15 minutes after they've started, and whatever there was to do, like whatever it was, might have been like almost gone, which is not the case in the past. So these things are very well attended. I think you're just seeing the more events we have, the fewer maybe people are at each one, and that number looks watered down.
And the other aspect of that is we're having more and more reoccurring events as well. In 2021, a lot of our events were one-offs because people weren't necessarily comfortable coming to an 8-person craft group every week. Nitwits is a great example of this. There's an average of 9 to 11 people who attend every week. And so that would be 52 a week, where we may only get 500 attendees. So that brings the whole average down. And we have several programs where it's relatively small attendance of 10 to 15, but they may meet, 50 times a year, and that's where you'll also see a lot of your average down. But those are a lot of our core library users that are coming in for every other program as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And the only reason that came to mind was because you'll see later on in the agenda we'll have a discussion about overall events in the community and how we can best highlight the events that are really successful, and maybe those that are not as successful, we divert resources to something else. And so that's kind of where my mindset was, but I appreciate the presentation and the volunteerism to take on this.
I'm a teacher. There's nothing I want more than books in kids' hands, and anybody's hands, really.
Well, thank you for being
Yeah.
here. That's it for me.
Richard?
I have one quick question. If you could go back to slide 7, Christian. Thank you.
Yes.
the stats. Here we go. So if you look across the new borrowers each
Mhm.
year, these are new borrowers that have been added to our libraries each year. So that's been increasing.
Yes.
Obviously, COVID, the past COVID's giving us some bump in numbers. But the registered borrow numbers are going down. So what is a registered borrower? And is the new borrower incorporated in that? I would expect
Trevor,
the number to
yep.
go up.
So a registered borrower is somebody, let me phrase that differently. A library card is good for 3 years. And so let's say you got a library card in 2017. And then so 2017, which if I go back far enough in statistics, 2017, 2018 had some really good numbers. And then you didn't come in and didn't renew your card post 2020, so 2021, there was a lot of people who didn't come in and renew
These are
their cards.
expiring library cards that just haven't come back to renew.
Exactly.
That answers the question.
Dave?
Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trevor. This, if you'll go back, I don't have the slide number. It's the one on upcoming library additions and habitats.
Maybe it's this, is it 6?
Talks about the lighting crosswalk and solutions.
Oop, too far. This? Yeah.
Are all of these intended for this budget year, i.e. calendar year? Which
This
end
is a little
in
different.
September. There's a target
When
for
you're
all
setting
of
up the
these
two
that are
recordings.
in that window.
Yes.
So the book bin was specifically in the budget for this year. The patio table was
It's more
purchased
vertical over
sometime
here.
last year. Like it's sitting in a storage
Click on
facility
it.
right now, waiting
Look
for
at it right over
basically
there.
warmer weather and better environment for install. The in-service training
It works
is
the
coming
same.
out of
It's a little
as far as like
harder.
our library budget. Same thing with the sculpture art. It was part of this year's budget as well. The butterfly habitats are relatively low cost, so that's not a.
You've answered the question. It's all
Yeah.
incorporated in this time frame. I just wanted
Mhm.
to put a little bit of a time expectation around it. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
And
So what's
appreciate
the other
all
thing?
that.
Okay, so that's that.
Yeah, but
The other thing is
Your
you have to roll.
I think most all of our
So all
programs.
you have to do is uncover the
We have a
podium
lot of
DC.
people come outside of our
Lower the time into the podium
Our
DC.
programs, in most part,
So,
superior to most all the other programs around here, whether it be the library, the rec center,
Uh,
the
Release the
Great
time.
Connection.
Drop it down to graphics.
You know, as long as we're not crowding our own people out, doing that, and a
It's
lot of
easier
these
for
people
you. All you're gonna do is
socialize
just
with
gonna
people from other
drop it
communities.
down.
I think it's
Tell
benefit
them
to
what you're
that.
doing, because it's-
And another point, if you ever get questioned about what we're doing, whoops the library, and sit in one of the English classes. I think you'll all be very, very surprised. I've been doing it a couple times in recent times, and the attendance is really great. And, you know, people tell me that they ride a bus an hour and a half at night at times to get over there to that class. It's one of the best classes in the Metroplex for them, and it's really encouraging to see
Okay,
what
crisis
they're able to
averted.
do and how we are helping people. So thank you for all you're doing and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay? All right. On to. Okay, A3 is discuss the special events calendar.
On the heels of the library, I was reminded in COVID, we're looking at the dynamic duo and Sandy Carter. We were 3 times a week. We went over to the library, picking up probably 30 orders of books that people were checking out online, and we would drive around to the community and run up to people's doors, drop them off, and we were the delivery team for Parks and Rec, helping out the library. So that was really cool for us just to drive around and be seeing a part of Farmers Ranch, and that was kind of cool. That was what they were doing, just innovative and things. Jeff Fairchild, Special Events Manager with Parks and Rec Department. And here with me is Megan Bernard, our Assistant Special Event Manager. In fact, I have Sandy Carter as well on our team. And we're here to discuss the 2023 Special Events Overview. This will encompass a little bit of history, a little bit of today, and a little bit of where we are going and with some council direction. And so you have that right. There it is. Okay. And throughout this, a couple of times you might see a interesting character right here. This gentleman right here is actually a Farmers Branch resident, David McMahon. Goes by the stage name is David Chicken, and he performs. He has his own band, Graceland Ninjas, which is performed at our events. He also does a similar type show for Halloween in the park. So just some versatility of our residents here. But that is David Chicken, David McMahon, residents, long-time residents. So here we go. So total events, and in your packet there, you had received kind of a list of things that we do. We kind of break things up in major, medium, and what we call minor events. And you kind of got a couple examples there in your packet of what we would define as a major event. Those, of course, would be your Independence Day celebration, Bloom and Bluegrass, tree lighting, and then some of your medium-sized events would be like the athletic tournaments, Daddy-Daughter Dance, which just took place, and then some of the smaller minor ones like the Pumpkin Splash. Sorry. So, event increase. So, there's been about a 60% since about 2018. This has been attributed to several things. You've had new parks come online, like the Bard Park. You've had some of our facilities have been renovated, and you've had new staff that have been hired. Folks getting in here and wanting to do new innovative things. Even COVID, in a way, had a way of bringing about a new event. Santa on the Move. We had to kind of pivot there and create a new event, and that event has kept going. So these increases have kind of, say, just added to our load there, and what we are offering our residents. Everything has been put on what we call world-class events. The standards of these events have not decreased, but we are seeing that strain with these increased events. So we took a look around surrounding North Texas here. What else is going on in the Metroplex as far as our neighbors in other cities? And just kind of came up with a snapshot here of some surrounding cities, just to kind of give you an idea of how we compare to other cities of similar size, some that as far as population goes. And you can kind of see with our major events at 25, we are coming in at that top end. So it's quite a bit. We are setting the bar, so to speak, as special events, and I think that's a good thing for our residents, a good thing for our businesses. But it does, what we'll get into that is what is the effect that has had. So, what does it take to put on an event? As I look around this room, it takes a village. We've all heard that phrase, and it does. I see PD, I see fire. I could go down the list. I see Shane with sustainability. There's HR, even HR gets involved. Who else help me out here? Sitting right next to you, communications department. Facilities out there on site helping with the events. Now, they might not be at every event, some of our smaller ones, but when it is a all-hands-on-deck event, you see this city mobilized. And I think that's just a hats off to what we're doing here. But we are asking more of our fellow employees, and we recognize that. This kind of gives you just a little bit of what does it take for, obviously, Parks Department is taking that lead on the events, and you see our special events team there at the top. There's myself, Megan, and Sandy there. As we are kind of the mastermind behind getting everything. I hate to say the straw that stirs the drink, but that's kind of what we do there. We're making sure everybody is staying in line, and the events that we're putting on meet the standards that we set forth. And then, of course, we have the parks preparation. That is the maintenance side. These are the park crews who are vital, absolutely necessary to put on these events. We could not put this on. They're the ones helping us set up. You see the tents, the infrastructure, everything, getting that park ready to put on an event. These guys are there setting up, they're taking down, they're the last ones to leave. They're there on Monday morning when they should be off, taking care of meetings. They're back there cleaning up the park, getting it ready for the residents, it's almost, leave no footprint behind, as they say, and don't even know that an event took place. And that takes a lot of work to do that, a lot of resources to do that. And then the recreation facilitation. It takes a lot of bodies to put on these events. We do a lot. We offer a lot. We ticket our events now. Gateways. We have we fence in our events now. That requires personnel. We offer a lot of activities that it puts a strain on those rec facilities because that's who we lean on heavily to help staff these events. My team and I, we're there managing. We're walking the event site. We're making sure everything is running on time. Bands get on stage. There's a lot to do. You need those troops on the ground making sure that everything we put in place is executed. And then a full event. There's a great picture of our Parks and Rec team. That's after I recognize the shirt. That was from our big 75th anniversary party we had in 2001. But that just kind of gives you an idea. That's a snapshot there. I don't see any of the park crew in there. I think that's just rec staff alone. So there's probably another 15 folks that are still out in the park cleaning up. So that just kind of gives you a little snapshot there of what all it takes to put on the event. But here we go with the challenges, staff shortages, and it's as we're seeing across the board. It's not just us. I know we lean on PD a lot to staff these events, and that's you guys lean on your officers who, in addition to patrolling the streets, there's bringing them into a multitude more events that we're doing. Our staff shortages. What we see our regular departments, the park crews, that their normal job is irrigation or ball fields, and we're asking them to come and work events on the weekends. Same with the rec staff. So we are seeing the pinch of these multitude of events is putting a real strain on the staff. Part-time turnover, this is huge. We've had quite a few part-time employees at the rec centers who have listed on their way out the door, why are you leaving? Too many events. I'm not here to I'm here to work the facilities, but you guys are just really pouring on the events. That has been an actual reason when they're out the door. And I mean, that we take notice of that. I mean, that's something that you have to be honest when you hire them, but then when they're leaving, that's not a good sign, and we want to address that. Duplicity among divisions. This is really what we're going to focus on Christmas, and that kind of tends to be the. And by the way, this gentleman right here, Santa, that is Danny Wiley, another Farmers Branch resident, by the way. So we call it almost a lighthearted Santa saturation. We have done so many Christmas events, it seems like, between all of our special events, the historical part, between the aquatic center and the rec center. You couldn't go anywhere, it seems, Farmers Branch without running into Santa last year. And so that's just an idea of what we're seeing is, again, we're all want to be creative when we get out there and do things, but I think we're recognizing that we are starting to see a little duplicity among the divisions. And then the efficiency of staff resources. Again, I go back to, the part-time staff, the rec staff who were hired to work in those facilities, the park ball fields, the grounds maintenance, the irrigation crews, the chemical crew. Those are what they were hired to do. And is that the most efficient use of their resources to have them working so many events on the weekends? And then obviously funding constraints as we're doing more events and starting to see costs going up, and just what we're seeing now, it's just unbelievable. I just got the bid on the shuttles for Bluegrass. I could not believe what it's costing now to rent shuttles, but we're seeing that, and that's just affecting the events. But again, we're still putting out a quality product. So where do we go from here? We have some recommendations. So it's been suggested that the city staff look into what would be a multicultural event look like for Farmers Branch. One that would represent the community, could represent beyond the community. Obviously, there's when you start looking at multicultural events, these food, art, dance, traditions, things of that nature. So we've got an idea with Viva Farmers Branch, can we transition that into a multicultural event that would be reflective of this community or beyond the borders of this community? Merging that into one event. How would that look? How would that feel? If we were to do that, it would probably need to take place in the spring of 2024. The planning of that event, the scope of that would require us to have to push that off into the spring of 2024. To do that, you would, and if the council still wanted to continue with Viva Farmers Branch, we could do that. That event is slated for the middle of September. If council still wanted to do both events and continue with Viva and do this multicultural event in the spring of 2024, we would probably look at contracting that out to an event management company. But I caution, even doing that, someone has to manage that company. They need to take direction from city staff. They want to do a good job, and they want to be doing what we want them to do. So it's not like we could just exonerate ourselves from that. We would be managing that company. And so, but if we were to transition Viva into a multicultural event, and Viva would, we would have to put the brakes on Viva and move everything to the spring, then our team could definitely take that on and would not need to contract that out. But we would probably have that event, probably third weekend of March. It would be the kicking off the event season. We would be cognizant of Easter and where that lands. But that would be an idea to kind of just reallocate and transition one of the events there. Denton Drive Live and Family Night in the Park. These are some of the events that are kind of a series, condensing those down, offering fewer Denton Drive Live, a fewer Family Night, but then transition that into, obviously have a huge project coming on with Hoya, and how that can lend itself to doing some events there. But I don't want to say let's not do events and then pick them up, because I've not accomplished anything basically. We've got to be strategic about how we do this. And in your packet there, you've got a list of events, suggested events for 2023, and you'll see some of the recommendations, some of the ones that we have offered up as to how we can reallocate those into some other events and transition them. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Christmas heavily on that event, that season, fall events, reducing elements. And what does that mean? Well, like for Halloween in the park, building the hedge takes an enormous amount of time, amount of resources, and to take that out of that programming element would free up staff, rec staff, would free up the park staff to getting back to what they were traditionally hired to do, and then reducing our Christmas in the Branch offerings to perhaps one big tree lighting. And right now we're currently doing 2 follow-up events in December, the second Saturday, the third Saturday, and just transitioning the staff hours and the funds for that event into having a fantastic, already is a fantastic tree lighting event, but pouring some more resources into that particular night. Just to kind of give you an idea of those that came out to that, we did something new last year with the drone show. We were the smallest drone show in North Texas, produced by a city. Just for reference, we had 50 drones out there. North Richland Hills had 1,000 drones, so you can definitely go up, and we're getting, and everyone loved that, but you can do so much more with more drones. So that would be an example of how you would use some of the funding from the other events to enhance the tree lighting night and extend the hours, maybe an extra hour instead of 5 to 9, go from 5 to 10, and things like that. And then another component that's coming online is going to be the holiday decor. We're going out to bid on that, and how that funding for that is going to be needed. So that could be where some of those funds for the second and third nights could be directed to. So with these recommendations, here's what we're hoping for outcomes: that no need for additional staff or contract staff. Let's reallocate, let's move some things around, shift some things, if you will, and that would put us in a better way to get back to doing things. Our park crews can be devoted to these some key projects that are coming online, and just about their day-to-day that they are would help with that. So no need for additional staff or contract staff, and then again, harping on this reallocation of staff resources and funds back to those key areas within the city that they are desperately needed, and just kind of putting that less strain on staff, because it does get challenging when you're getting into December and it's that last weekend before Christmas, and trying to find staff to work. I get it. I completely get it. And we've been lucky that we've had folks that hang around and are willing to work, but those are just some of the outcomes that we are hoping for today with council input. And then lastly is just kind of a philosophy of where are we headed in the future. We're constantly looking at our events, reevaluating them. Last time I was here in early 2020 was when we had taken a look at the Twilight, the farmers market, and they said, hey, you know what? I think this thing is we've tried it for 2-3 years now. It's just not giving us the results. So we are constantly looking at, and we shifted that event into Denton Drive Live. So we are looking at that. So just know that we're constantly doing that, even events within events. The year Celebration of Roses was one, and we just took a look at that and said, the attendance was not to really justify what the resources we're going with that. So just know that we're constantly looking at ways to enhance things, and even at Didn't Drive Live, we thought we would start out with some kids' activities. It really wasn't working out, so we're constantly striving and looking at how we can better provide a better event. Resident-focused events, this is some of our events are pretty much, you would say, general audience. They appeal to everyone. Obviously, we have some niche events. Veterans Day would be like a niche event. I would say Blue Note Bluegrass would be a very niche event, a very certain type audience. So we are looking at, for the most part, we do general population events, which are pretty much open and appeal to everyone. But even another niche event, fishing fun. That really is probably the one event that you could look at in Texas Parks and Wildlife with the fishing and everything. So that would be, in my mind, yes, it's general audience, but it kind of fits a niche with regards to Texas Parks and Wildlife. So this just kind of gives you an idea of what we've put forth today, and I think as we kind of wrap things up here with questions, for us moving forward, just kind of some council consensus on our ideas for a multicultural event, how that can look, and then how we have presented some of the events today that we would like to just reallocate funds. And are you guys okay with what we presented for 2023? And
Just remember to change the settings once we,
What's your comments on those?
with the settings button up here, you can change it to the video, the screen settings.
They're about combining events.
I put it over.
Just down the line here, see if you have any direction. You comfortable with combining events, things like that, multicultural things? I think it depends. Psychologically, I think we can bring unity to people more than just try to focus on one particular group. I think that's positive as far as the community to do that. So you all be comfortable if they come up with a program on that?
I'm comfortable. I would, Mayor, and I would say that, and thank you, Jeff, very much. The one thing that I would like to see, and I think that this is an ongoing conversation, this is not going to be all decided
No, certainly.
is, do we have a P&L on each of the events, at least the major events, so we know what the revenue expenses are?
we do,
Okay.
yes, sir.
I think that's something that council we need to look at
Okay.
and consider as we move forward, trying to determine what events are we getting our bang for the buck for, what are resident focused or more general population, what are those events that are real strains on staff, because part of that P&L I would expect would have resource costs, employee costs, those kinds of things in it. I overall am very supportive of the idea of trying to scale the list down. There's a lot of events here.
67 events.
Yeah, there's a lot of events here, and there's just too many. And so combining and making a multicultural event, I think is a great idea. It promotes inclusivity and accommodates the diversity. I call it our beautiful melting pot here in Farmers Branch. Didn't Drive Live and Family Night, I think is another great combination approach. I think there's more opportunities here. I can't really consider them without understanding the costs and kind of knowing more of those kinds of details. But I am supportive of this.
Like I say, we're looking at the events that, I would say for the most part, the sheer number, reducing will help tremendously, I think, with across the board. And, our events outside of Bluegrass or Independence Day, they're ticketed. Our revenue streams are very limited. I mean, our goal, I think, is free events, free parking. We're not nickel and diming people. Our revenue streams are sponsorship, food and beverage. That's really what it comes down to. So the P&L on those, certainly we can get those for you, but it's quality of life. Those are things that a lot of cities doing their events But we obviously want to do something that makes sense, and that's really what it comes down to. The resources, like you mentioned, is it just too much to where the return just doesn't make sense anymore?
Jeff, thanks for the presentation. There's a lot to unpack here. Help me understand what a multicultural event might look like. And I know we kind of at least bantered this around internally. Obviously, Viva Farmers Ranch was focused on the Hispanic community. So we have others. We had the Diwali event at one point. What does this look like? Saying that we're going to have an event, I'll just leave it at that.
I think you could, as I mentioned, you could just represent your community and the residents that live here, the different cultures that are now home to Farmers Branch, or do you focus on the world? I mean, it could be a number of things that you can, maybe you identify one country a year that you focus on, and then there's representation of that. I think it's important that the community have a voice in this, because in saying, hey, this is representative, but obviously it's the traditions of art and music and food and those things that are represented, and groups that and traditions and crafts and things like that. That's how I would kind of envision this type of event. And again, is it representative of our community? We just don't go beyond that, or are we trying to get something that's a little more broad and represents maybe the world, and just we're showing. There's really no defined way. It has to be like this way, or it has to be. It can be a very fluid thing. After year one, you might say, hey, you know what? Let's focus on pick a country next year, and then that doesn't mean that's the only country represented.
I wonder if there are other multicultural events maybe that we could look and see what
Yeah, and I
other
think,
cities do.
let's be honest, we know that there are other things that occur in our region. You could look at the Irish festival, you could look at the Greek festival, you could go on and on. There are other things that are. So I'm interested in how the city sponsored would look. Many of those others, I know the Greek festival is affiliated with the church there at Richardson, correct me if I'm wrong, they have a location from maybe Dallas. But understanding how those go. So I'm interested in how the city would put that on it. So to Richard's point, would it be interested in understanding how others may have tackled this? And I know what you just described as part of that approach, but in the back of my mind, it might be blending too many things together at one time is something we need to be cautious of, not necessarily fearful of, but cautious of. The idea that let me put a few more items in my drink. When I'm at the dispenser, a suicide drink doesn't always taste very good when you try to mix everything together. Using that as a facetious example. So I'm just lending that discussion. I think the idea of trimming the number of events, you go back to the slide where we stack up with others. I think we want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples in those. Obviously, we don't want to be. We want to put on world-class events, and you guys do a fantastic job. And I appreciate all that you do and all the staff that's involved in making those things happen. And so we want to make sure we find the right balance. And so this is a bigger issue. Richard alluded to it. We're not going to solve all these problems here during this discussion. And so I think working with you guys to understand where the opportunities are to squeeze, and then we also have to be cognizant there will be new things that we want to put into the mix as well. So I don't think this might be the end of this particular growth and expansion.
When I was mayor before, I went to some multicultural events that were performed, and they seemed to work well. What they did is they kind of had kiosks of different things, and it was mixed, of clothing and traditions and things that they did, and they seemed to work pretty well. I think they seemed to get better attendance than that. They did, I went to some of them were Chinese and Korean and different ones too over the years, and they've seemed to have fallen off somewhat. And I'm not sure how these are. I've been invited to ones this time around, so I don't know. But there were some successful things that they did with them. It has to have somebody that's good at putting it together and doing all that. talk about Christmas a minute. Have any of you had complaints about the fact that we did quit doing the drive through the park Christmas thing? And that was terribly expensive. How much did we pay Ben for all that decorations and putting them up?
Several $100,000.
How much?
Several $100,000.
I know it was terribly expensive, and of course you had to replenish them every year and get new things and all that. But there might be something along that theme that we could. How much on these drones? I guess there's companies that do that.
And right now there's just one in the Metroplex that's in that mall. And we would guess maybe in the next 5 years that there will be more companies, but right now there's only one company. And they're kind of doing everything in the United States, like at NASCAR, baseball games, and things like that.
Theoretically, what if we had people come in and do a drone demonstration that lasted 5 minutes or 6 minutes or something? And you let people do it in the park, and then you move them through on the trail, and then a new group come in or do something like that. One of the things that was really appealing, the fact that we spend tons of money on it, was that thing was manned by organizations in the community. And it was a fundraiser for them because we took donations, and they manned the thing. We didn't have near as many staff people involved in that Christmas drive-through thing. And that is just another thing that we might kind of look at. And I don't know that vehicle's out there yet with the drones. They have a lithium pattern battery, so they have a life to them. You can't just continually run them on and on. But something like that might be, and we wouldn't have such an ungodly upfront cost of the material of putting the stuff up and doing all that. You might be able to some way kind of combine all that and come up with a program that, because those things are programmed, and they can do all kinds of things with those, and you could change the programs up and like that. So.
Maybe just hop in real quick. Mike Ashburn, Deputy City Manager, former Parks and Rec Director. So I'll rewind the clock back here 5 years ago, and we used to do the Tour of Lights, which was immensely successful, but it was a huge capital outlay, upwards of close to $300,000 at that point. And people kind of came through and toured and spit out into Dallas and spent money there. And so that's why council at that point said, hey, why don't we go ahead and do something totally different? And then that's when we got the outdoor ice rink in partnership with the Dallas Stars. I happened to help write that contract, and it was a huge upfront capital expense for us, and huge, $150,000, but almost nothing moving forward, cost of the residents. So all the upkeep and operational costs were on the Dallas Stars at that point. We did the 3 Christmas events moving forward to kind of subsidize some of the programming that was happening during the Christmas season. We did get some complaints early on, oh my gosh, I can't live in Farmers Branch anymore, we no longer have tour boats. That died down after a couple of years, and people became very comfortable with the events that we had, which were fantastic. What we need direction from council for, because it's kind of gone this way, we're spending too much, decrease, so we found a way to do that, and then each year we started increasing, and we kind of kept changing. And so I think what Jeff and Megan and Sandy probably need at this point is direction. Are we comfortable with the cost that we're spending now? Do we want to decrease it or increase it? If we start there, I think they can bring back some ideas for you all to consider moving forward in terms of Christmas and events as a whole. So take what I just said and extrapolate that to the entirety of the special events. So Jeff's kind of articulating the challenges that we'll run into. We came from here about 5 years ago to here on special events with the same number of staff and the same resources if you look at the budget. And so we're stretching those really thin. As we get the new amenities, as this cascades down, we also have Hoya coming online. We have the turf floor and good that just opened up. We have several other things that have happened that Montgomery Park and on down the line. And so John Burke Nature Preserve, which is now going to require more upkeep. And so we're using those same staff. We either need to increase staff and increase resources as costs continue to increase, or scale down this list to kind of fit within the box we're in. So this is probably, like you said, a deeper conversation. I think right now Jeff probably just needs to know, are we doing the Viva this year, because that is coming up. We want to take a pause on it, and then we can have more of a discussion holistically, special events, cost, and here, like, contain it to this box, and then we'll come up with a new plan for you to consider. Is that fair?
Well, I know the decorations were terribly expensive, and we spent had a contractor spend much with them up and doing all that, taking them down. And that came out of the Hotel Motel Association. They're the ones that generated that. Some of them went over to Longview or somewhere and seen a bunch, they've had a program over there, they got hotel motel nights off of it and all that. And they came here and put pressure on the city to instill that program out of our hotel motel fund, is where it started. And so, I know it's terribly expensive, and I'm not wouldn't advocate we go back to that kind of thing, but if there's some other kind of a way we could do it without throwing out a horrendous amount of money and time and effort into putting the things up, that it might be something to pursue. Any other questions?
I do. So, I mean, I'm in, so just so you're clear on my preference, I'm certainly in support of reducing the number of events and being a little bit more efficient with our resources, both staff and financial. So I'd be in support of having a multicultural event. Now, whether we have Viva Farmers Branch in the fall, I have a question. So I had learned that the multicultural event would require a committee of residents representing different cultures to be able to represent each culture in the way that it needs to and be respectful of. Is that something that you guys are planning on doing?
I think that would be critical for the success of this, to get the input from those residents that want to be a part of this and are willing to put in the hours and to invest in this, because we need partners in this, and ideally it's someone who's going to be with us along the way and not just for a meeting or two. I see it as a committee like you just identified.
And so who would be responsible for facilitating that committee? Would it be staff who would eventually plan this? I'm trying to figure out whose time would be taken to
if we were going to transition and not do Viva in the fall, because our time and to put this on in the spring, then our team would be taking the lead on that event, this multicultural event in the spring of 2024, and immediately start looking at, putting together a committee of residents who would like to volunteer their time for this and are passionate about this and want to see this. And I think that getting their input would be critical. So we would be taking the lead, and whether that's city putting out a call for volunteers, those that have an interest, please, I don't know how that would work, and it's not board position. I don't know what you would technically call this, active committee made up of residents and who are willing to, again, we're looking for long term. It's not just coming to a meeting and we lay out, here's what we think is required. I mean, it might take 10 planning meetings. Are you willing to invest in this and maybe help recruit volunteers and come to the table with ideas? That's kind of how I'm seeing this evolve.
I see. So it would take time from you guys, and you guys would also, if we did Viva Farmers Branch, I'm hearing that it would be kind of juggling both responsibilities.
I think to get the outcome that we're wanting, it would be recommended to go ahead and just transition Viva into this spring time event and put the brakes on it for 2023 and let it go into and be a component of this multicultural event in 2024.
Yeah, well, I try to attend as many events as possible. I don't put them together, but just attending them, sometimes it can be a lot. So I understand that also fall seems to be filled with a lot of events. So I'd certainly also be in support of transitioning Viva Farmers Branch into the spring to have it be the multicultural event, just out of respect for y'all's time and sanity. And then same thing for Denton Drive. If there's an opportunity to, again, get more value by reducing the events, I'd certainly be okay with that. I don't want to, automatically. I think it's 6 events, is it, that we have for Denton Drive?
At 6, and actually taking it down to 5 because the September Denton Drive Live with Viva was becoming problematic. And so we went ahead and And because of costs were going up with entertainment, we went ahead and made the call to take that down to 5 events and reducing the September 1 for 2023. So, which just turned out, a good thing. Even blue bluegrass and stuff taken up as well. So that worked out.
So you're saying your recommendation here is to go from 6 events to 5?
5 to 4, depending on, again, some of that would be as transition to, as we say, use Hoya and putting some of those dollars and resources into a grand opening at Hoya that will take place sometime over in the spring or late summer, whenever that comes online.
Okay.
And then how Hoya gets programmed, you mentioned that again, not reducing, but then standing over here and adding more, that doesn't solve the issue. You stood up, so.
So in your package, you have a proposed schedule for 2023. Our staff is going through the list, we've got our internal report. So what we're proposing for 2023, which we're already in February at this point, we have not posted our 2023 schedule. With these projects coming online and then with their considerations that are in your packet, this is what staff is proposing going forward for the year. We want to make sure that council is comfortable with this event schedule. And what we're looking at, like Jeff said, is reality, right? We're not looking at eliminating because, again, we're bringing on Hoya, which is an additional meeting, which will require the opening and outdoor one part. So now that takes the family night, right? Why not take our family night from the historical park, move it over to Hoya, right? It's a playground. It's going to be the best playground in the nation, right? So why not transition that? I mean, I call it a family night per se, but we're moving that event over. So the same thing with Dent Drive Live. Yeah, they have one of them partnering with groups, Crawford's Boil, so taking it from 6 to 5, which we were absorbing because of the then we'll go down to 4, so these series will be 4. And then limiting some of the Christmas events, right? So instead of having 3, 1 tree lighting, 2, we'll reduce it down to 1, reallocate those resources into tree lighting, and beginning into Christmas. So what that schedule is what we're proposing for this year. Our team has gone through, Councilman Jackson, you talked about profit and loss. Our events philosophy at this time has not been to make revenue, it's providing a service for the city. So going through, yes, we know where we're trying to know where we're getting revenue, what our cash recovery models are. But this one is a matter of what services are we offering, what's being needed, and how can we continue to provide our programs and our events, right? And so we're not asking to reduce the whole giant 60, but we're looking at specifically for you all, is those major events. And internally, we can address and mitigate some of those. If we have an Easter egg, but here we have to do Easter egg. Those are programs, not necessarily big events. So just when I know Jeff is looking for direction, are you comfortable with the 2020 year schedule that's proposed? Again, this may require more conversation, but we're very, very short on time.
Yes, I would like to respectfully suggest we move this discussion perhaps to our strategic planning session, or maybe schedule a session, because just from the time, I mean, there's a lot of ideas I have and comments and questions, and I think we've got 10 items here on the study session. That's one point, but I think we need a lot more time and discussion on this. And on one point I'd like to make, Mike brought up, whether to go with the Viva event this year or not. It is only half a year away, as you mentioned. And so I would be in favor of going ahead with it for this year. And then later we can look at this broader discussion of all of the events and if we want to move it. Because I know I think it was very, very successful, even though it was our first one, and I've heard good things about it from the community. And it was also designed to tie in with, Hispanic month of September. So I would see a potential issue there with moving it to February, March, spring. 2, we have lots of storms and tornadoes and thunderstorms in the spring. We have a lot of events in the spring. February is Black History Month. And I would certainly like to have the time to consult with a lot of my Hispanic friends and citizens to kind of get some feedback on moving that. And since we just started it and it's been very successful, I would think it would be a bit of a shame and a little confusing, to the citizenry if we said, well, we're going to cancel it or not have it this year, or maybe we're going to do something which, we haven't really all decided or agreed upon. And I've got several other points, but I think time.
I think just in response to that, one of the things you said is really a key point, is what is success. And I think that we need to define that for all of these events. I'm not looking for profit. Those are community services and costs, but what I'm looking for is efficiency. I think we owe that to taxpayers. But I think defining what success means in these events is a very important thing. We're not going to do that.
I mean, there's so many different directions we could go. I mean, we could have an all-day or half-a-day discussion on this. I mean, I lived in New York City, we had Puerto Rican and Greek and German and Irish and, Swahili and Asian, et cetera, et cetera. We have a Vietnamese community here and in the region. And so, I think this is just a much bigger topic that we need to tackle. Another time. So, okay. What's that?
Going on such a short timeline. I recognize it. I agree. I think that multicultural, given the fact that the way we're growing is important. But for the sake of timing for them to get everything.
The schedule is totally wild.
We agree that this modified schedule is what we've agreed to for today, and we can have further conversations on what it looks like later on.
Well, it's been brought to your attention, something to think about. Put some more quality time into it.
Jeff, if I could clarify, when we talk about, and this follows on Tina's discussion point here, when we talk about the event schedule, we're talking about both the major and the tentative event list that was provided here. Are we talking just for clarification? So if we accept the list that is provided here with the blackouts of Family Night in the Park, Net Drive Live on lines 4, 9, and we address the holidays in the park on 16, 18, and 19. Are we comfortable with what we have? This is a question to the council. With what we have, which includes, to the point, the Viva Farmers Branch would occur this year. I'm comfortable with that, if that is what's being proposed.
So you're going to
Okay, let's go.
outside of the Farmers Branch, what kind of conversation do we transition into agriculture? I think we're talking about building on unsuccessful event placement.
Okay.
If somebody experienced agriculture, do we have to do this?
So
Or are we delaying that
one
decision if it pushes out?
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
As I stated, I would be in favor of keeping Viva for scheduling half a year. That is a short timeline, I know, but you've got a lot to organize and music, food, all of that. And if we want to move to a multicultural, whatever time of year we did it, we can always do that. But like I said, since we've established this as a major event in the city, and over half of our population is Hispanic, I would really like to get feedback from, a lot of those people in that community before we just say, well, we're going to cancel it, or maybe we're going to move it to the spring, or maybe not. I think we need to spend time on that personally.
I think to be very brief on the answer you're looking for, I'm happy with the schedule that you guys provided. And as I mentioned earlier, I'd be in support of the multicultural event, which, as you said, would mean that Viva Farmers Branch would be rolled into the spring with the multicultural event.
We are good with 1223 as proposed, for Viva, for that, for strategic retreat for evo versus multicultural?
So it's about hearing that we'll make a decision on Vivo and multicultural at the strategic event and not today. So, yeah.
If you can make it today, I would rather take it.
I know you would. I know you would. I think Michael's point of making sure the residents understand what the impacts are and having the opportunity to dialogue and vet this appropriately is super important. So I hear the concern, and I think I stated it as well. I'd like to see what multicultural looks like, and if we have the appropriateness of inclusion and careful to use the wording, if you will, to not disrupt the apple cart. But the fear, and this is a fear I have, is that we leave some, and that is a concern. Trying to be inclusive, but I do inevitable that you're going to leave a segment out if we're not careful. So flying it under the banner of multicultural, very important to hit all of that. It's going to kind of allude to how is this going to work. We need to engage our churches, our neighborhoods, and our residents quite a bit in order to make this work. So